Thank you for joining us this evening. We are very pleased to have you all along to talk about mapping tools and how they can help to support some of the community-led planning work that is going on across the borders. We're lucky tonight to be joined by a number of people who are experts in various different aspects of this. Put my teeth back in again. We have Tim, who's joining us from Gavington, Fogo and Polwarth Community Council. We have Chris from Paris Online, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the tool that they have available for community councils and community groups to use. We have Paul from PAS, who has bucket loads of experience with all of this community-led planning stuff. And we'll also have Debbie Armstrong from Strategic Planning from Scottish Borders Council to talk a little bit about what that means for us as well. My name's Naomi Sweeney. I'm part of the team that's supporting the placemaking work, and I think I've met many of you, but I'm delighted to have you along if this is your first time. Just in terms of housekeeping, this meeting is being recorded. If you prefer not to be seen on screen, please feel free to turn your camera off. We're recording it purely for the purposes of making it available to other communities who may wish to review it at a later date, who maybe aren't quite at the mapping side just now. We do also have Beth Lambton with us this evening. Not to embarrass you, Beth, but Beth is from Borders Community Action and is doing a super job of taking up the mantle from the webinars that we've been doing here at SBC and looking at further opportunities for peer learning, sharing and information that people might want to see. So we'll help to promote some of those webinars in the coming months as well. You're very welcome to do a shout out at the end as well if you'd like, Beth, but we'll certainly circulate that around all attendees. So if there's no questions, we'll just get started and I'll just hand over to Tim to give us his part of the presentation. Thank you.
Right, I'm on. Okay. So can we all see that? Yes?
Yes, we can see that, Tim.
Okay, fine. Okay, let's go. I think I recognise quite a few faces, but anyway, I'm Tim and I manage the website for Gavington, Fogo and Polwarth in the Eastern Borders, and I'm going to chat a bit about my experience in creating maps for our community website. I'll explain how I got started, show you a couple of maps on the website, what's involved, and suggest how you can start creating maps for your community. I'll keep it brief, as the main topic this evening is the Community Map Scotland project launched by Parish Online towards the end of 2022. I first got involved with digital maps in 2016 whilst planning a broadband project for several community councils in Berwickshire. We needed to know the location of properties to be served by the broadband network, and to do this, our community council chair signed up for a map licence with Ordnance Survey, and I was nominated as the mapping contractor. And I think, as we all know, the map licence is free to all community councils. I then taught myself how to create digital maps using online resources which are free and how to publish these on our community website. The last step is important so the maps can be seen by everyone. My main aim is to create maps to inform people about interesting things in and around our local area. And the maps on our community website are popular with users. I've included links on some slides so you can have a look at the digital content later. The webinar presentations will be available to everybody shortly. Next slide, please. This slide shows the maps page on our community website with links to several maps, including walks and cycle trails, places of interest, planning applications, and other maps and projects. The page is intended to show examples of useful maps on a community website. I suggest you have a look at the maps in your own time and use the link on the slide or type Gavington Maps into Google search. A short video on this page explains how to make best use of the maps. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on a couple of planning applications in our community council area. Other maps on the website follow much the same format. Next slide. Current planning applications in our area are discussed at every community council meeting, and this slide shows the table of planning applications for a meeting last year. The community council planning officer sends me a similar table before every meeting to publish on the website. It includes brief details of each application and any changes since the last meeting. In my experience, Borders council planning data are more up to date than national data. Next slide. That's right. Okay, so basically I create this map of planning applications from the previous table with symbols showing the location and the current status. In a moment, I'll show you this map online, but first a few words on what's needed to create maps. Most of us already use a computer for word processing, email, and similar tasks, and this is enough to get started on creating digital maps. Any modern computer will be fine with an internet download speed of at least 5 megabits per second. The faster, the better. Website and social media administrators are well placed to take on the mapping role for a community. I'll now show you an online version of this planning map. Next slide.
This shows approved and new applications since the last committee meeting and applications that are still ongoing. A windfall application in the northwest of the area is pending and the location of each turbine is shown. There's some concern locally that the large turbines will adversely affect nearby properties. You can switch off the legend here and switch on the list of applications here. The changes since the last meeting are marked with an asterisk. Scroll around and zoom in using the plus and minus symbols here or the mouse scroll wheel. Tap the home symbol to go back to the initial view. Tap here for an aerial view. Now let's have a closer look at this application in Gavington. Tap the symbol to show the pop-up and then here to park it to one side for a better view. Then tap zoom for a closer view. This shows street level detail and the Gavington Conservation Area shaded pink. The Council asks for a response from the Community Council for all planning applications inside this area. Tap here for the Council's planning portal, which has full details of this planning application. And now back to the map view. I hope this example demonstrates the value of interactive maps on a community website. As I've mentioned, other maps on the site are used in the same way.
Okay, next slide, please. I use 3 online mapping software and maps and data from Ordnance Survey. As already mentioned, Ordnance Survey resources are free to all community councils through a mapping license called the Public Sector Geospatial Agreement. I've used Ordnance Survey data to include boundaries, postcodes and properties in my maps. I've customized the appearance of symbols, lines, shapes and text fonts to my liking. For those that are interested, I started out using QGIS mapping software, but now use ArcGIS, which enables maps to be embedded on a website. These mapping platforms are free, subject to generous data limits, and you can Google QGIS and ArcGIS for further information. Like any software, digital mapping requires some effort to master, and the learning curve is quite steep for the do-it-yourself approach, which I've followed. Fortunately, there's now an easier way to create maps with the Community Map Scotland project mentioned earlier. Chris Muse knows all about this and he'll tell you about it in the next presentation. I'll just say a few words on my limited experience of using this software. Next, please. To avoid repetition, I'll refer to Community Map Scotland as CMS from here on. CMS has easy to use mapping tools and provides plenty of online support. There's no need to install any software on your computer, and your maps are held on the parish online server, not your computer. CMS offers a free user account to all community councils for 12 months and a modest annual subscription thereafter. Chris will explain more about this. Your community council chair then signs up to an Ordnance Survey map license, opens a mapping account with CMS, and nominates a mapping person to use the account. The main license condition is that maps are only used for non-profit and community use. Copyright notices are built into the CMS software. I've done some research on the number of community councils in Scotland with a map license. Of course, this changes over time, so this is just a recent snapshot. 172 current community councils currently have a map license in 29 councils across Scotland. 104 of these issued jointly with CMS. The Scottish Borders Council has 14 community councils with a map license and ranks third in Scotland behind Highland and Fife councils. Next, please. This slide shows community councils in the Borders with and without a map license and their distribution across the 5 area partnerships. The blue and orange sections in the bar chart are community councils with a map license, and the grey sections are those without a license. The orange sections are community councils signed up to Community Map Scotland. There are 69 community councils in the Borders and 55 don't have a license, 80% of the total. No community council in Teviot and Liddesdale area partnership has a map license. 1 community council in Cheviot has one, and 2 in Eildon. This low take-up is disappointing, as a license has been available to community councils since 2010. I suspect many community councils simply don't know about the map license, and some may be concerned about the time and effort needed to use the mapping resources. There's clearly scope to increase awareness, and I think national and local government could do more to help with this. From the council's perspective, community maps can improve engagement with communities in planning, projects, and community resilience. Next, please. Just having a quick drink. This slide shows the 7 community councils signed up with CMS in the Borders out of the 14 with a map license. No community councils are signed up with CMS in 2 area partnerships, Eildon and Teviot and Liddesdale. Next, please. This slide shows planning applications for a discussion at our Community Council AGM in 2019, created using the CMS software. This CMS map and display are slightly different to the planning map shown earlier using ArcGIS, but show the same information. Details of each application are shown in the panel on the left compared to the pop-up box in ArcGIS. Information in this panel can be toggled between the map legend and the mapping tools. The map's easy to create and doesn't require any specialist mapping skills. Plenty of support is available within the software and online. Planning Aid Scotland can help with training in using CMS software to prepare local place plans, and Paul Eade will explain more on this. In my opinion, Community Map Scotland offers a great opportunity for non-techies to create interesting maps for their communities. Next, please. A useful feature in CMS is the option to embed maps on a website using the map publishing tool. As an example, this slide shows the same AGM planning map embedded on our community website. Website maps are, of course, public-facing for anyone to view. There's also an option to share a link to this interactive map with others. As already mentioned, all maps and content are hosted on the Parish Online server, so any changes made there will be reflected in associated map links and maps on your website. Next, please. Another useful feature in CMS is the option to print maps to share with others as email attachments, to hand out at meetings, or to incorporate in reports. This slide shows the A4 print of the same AGM planning map. Next. This slide shows the 2 map formats I've shown you this evening, ArcGIS and Community Map Scotland. Both deliver the same information. The ArcGIS version on the left may be a bit neater, but more importantly, the CMS version is much easier to create. Next. I hope this presentation will encourage more community councils to sign up to Community Map Scotland and get started on creating maps for their communities. I should mention that community councils can create maps for other third sector bodies, provided they are for non-profit use and in the public interest. The last link on this slide is to a 30-minute webinar, which explains how to get started using Community Map Scotland. Finally, I'm also providing maps for a proposed shared access path across the eastern borders called the Borders Greenway. This 40-mile path will be included in the Council's active travel strategy, which will be published soon. The Borders Greenway crosses 14 community councils between Tweedbank Railway Station near Melrose and Eyemouth. Place planning teams along the route should be aware of this project, which mainly follows the Old Berwickshire Railway. The link to information on the Borders Greenway is on the maps page of our website, or type Borders Greenway into Google search. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll do my best to answer any questions. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Tim. That's really informative presentation on your kind of journey with maps, and I think the number of maps you included with that would probably sort of testament to how well you can use the different softwares that are available now. Was there any questions for Tim? Helen.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so I'm from See the Change. For those of you who don't know, we're a charity in Eyemouth. One of the reasons I've come on this this webinar tonight is that one of the things that we've been looking at is about litter picks across Berwickshire and trying to map where they're happening and just get a more robust set of data about what's happening and where. Do you think, Tim, that this type of system would work for that purpose? Do you think we could use this mapping system in that way?
Well, yes, provided we know where, provided you've got the geospatial data on what's happening where. Sorry, is that?
Yeah.
It's certainly. The question is, who would actually, would this be done by a community council or a development trust or what?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, obviously, as we've got the Berwickshire Anti-Litter Group who are working on this whole issue of litter and trying to get a bit more robust data about what's happening and where. So I'm hoping that that would be one option, is that the BAG group, the Anti-Litter Group, might take this on as a means just to firm up the amount of information we've got on what's happening and where and how much rubbish is collected and so on. But it's getting at kind of, we thought that a mapping process might be useful for that.
Well, as I've tried to explain, you need to be able to have the public sector geospatial agreement to start with.
Right.
Or someone in your associated with your group that could do that, and they can then do the work for you. Okay, but that's the first point of call is the license, and the Community Map Scotland would be a good place to do it, but they do require a public sector body to get the license to start the process.
Okay. Thank you.
Chris, perhaps I could ask you to come in on that. If there is a situation whereby the community council doesn't necessarily want to take up the license, but another community group did, is that something that could be discussed and agreed, or is it very much dependent on the community council wanting to accept ownership of that license?
It's a bit easier if it's the community council, because they can get the PSGA license that Tim's talking about. But there are scenarios where those community groups can act as almost a subcontractor to the community council. From our point of view, community groups can sign up to CMS, but they'd sign up on behalf, representing a community council area. So just to sort of work with them in partnership on it. If you're looking at litter picks across a larger area, not just your local area, then it might be something that we put a new layer of information into that can all be collaborated by all the various different community groups, and that will build up a bit of a crowdsourced picture. That might be a good approach for it. So if there's demand for that, then we're happy to change the software, add bits into the software for it.
Yeah, it's just something we're exploring. So yeah, but thank you for that information.
Cool.
Thank you. First hand is Rachel.
Thanks. Yeah, mine's not so much a question, more a comment really, to underline what Tim was saying earlier about the importance of using maps to support engagement. I'm on the Borders Greenway steering group with Tim, and for the last 2-3 years we've been using his maps, and I don't know what we'd have done without them. They've been really powerful in terms of engaging with different communities along the route. And enable us to sort of take information from people, plot it, show it back to them, change it, create route descriptions, add photographs, and it's been really, really powerful kind of tool. And so I'd just like to underline how important they've been to our process.
Thank you. And I popped the link to the Borders Greenway story map in the chat as well, if anybody would like to look at that. And it's it's a very comprehensive view of what that project's all about, and a really powerful way of explaining it all to the community. Helen, I've still got your hand. Did you want to come back in? Nope. Keith,
Sorry, just forgot to take it down. Sorry.
no problem at all. Keith, your next hand.
Similar to Rachel, really, it's just to emphasise a few of the things that Tim said. I mean, first of all, big thanks to Tim. I was chair of the Gavington Fogo Polworth Community Council when we started all this, and Tim's been at this for about 8 years, so many thanks to Tim. There are a couple of things that came up, and I think Helen's point about getting access to this. I mean, from my memory, it was really easy getting the license. Now, I know we were a community council, but there didn't seem to be any restrictions on who we would work with. And one of the things that I think will be most important, in the future, is how this all links with the community-led planning activity, which is going on across Berwickshire, which I've been involved in. And it seems to me that it's going to be useful in a few ways. First of all, it will help communities understand and demonstrate what the communities want. And so as part of that sort of development process of a plan. And the other thing, and I think this is really important too, is it will help potential funders, sponsors visualize what it is that is important within communities. Now, you can write all these things down, but I think actually images and maps, certainly from my perspective, make a big difference in the ease with which you can communicate with quite a varied audience. So I wanted to say that again, just looking back, I was involved in the COVID activity and the Resilient Communities Coordinator for our area. We had maps showing where all of the vulnerable people were within our community. These were not public maps, I might say, but we were able, as a group of people supporting the vulnerable people within the community during COVID, to see where volunteers were and where vulnerable people were. As I say, it was a private, it was a sort of confidential mapping, but this mapping activity is really helpful, because then you can sort of decentralize the model of delivering support. Doesn't all have to come through one individual, and I was concerned about that from my own perspective. So we were able to sort of gain groupings and disseminate information and have people reacting much more quickly than if they'd gone through one individual. So I see this as really important for the future, and I would encourage all the community councils, and bearing in mind that some of the planning, the community-led planning, placemaking, whatever we want to call it, we're trying to avoid placemaking, recognizing that some of that is done out with communities. I think partnerships with communities and community councils is the way forward.
Thanks, Keith. And I think just that notion about the maps becoming more important. The maps that are created in CMS can also be shared back with us as a council. So we can actually start to collate these things and get a bit of a view about what's happening across the piece as well, which is really helpful to understand the relationships with adjoining community councils and the likes. So that's something that obviously adds to the kind of value of that tool. Ivan, you were next hand.
Hi, I'm Ivan. I convene a placemaking exercise in Smelum. Last year, I accessed Parish Online because I was kind of, I became aware of it, and I think I ended up in CMS. And I did find out that indeed the community council where Smelum is seems to have a license. And so when I accessed it, I was asked for a password, couldn't find one. Referred to the chairperson of the community council. Somehow the information has been lost about who was holding that license and who's got a password. So basically we can't access it. So what's the next port of call?
If just email our support and we'll be able to sort that out.
Yeah, okay.
It's support@parish-online.co.uk.
Support.
I'll put it in the chat for you.
Okay, thank you. That's all really, thank you.
That was an easy answer for us as well then. That's great. Was there any more questions for Tim before we move on to the next presenter?
Naomi, if I can just quickly speak.
Of course.
My name's Logan Ingalls. I'm Reston Auchencrow Community Council Secretary and also Resilience Coordinator. Helen briefly mentioned See the Change and litter picking. I'm involved with that group so I can speak to her afterwards and sort out maps. And getting back to Tim and what Keith Dickinson had mentioned is during COVID and lockdown, our resilience teams of Reston and Auchencrow used the maps, and they were really, really good because we could identify volunteers, assets, and also during COVID and lockdown, we used another community council, Eyemouth Community Council, because they were the closest to pharmacies, and we had to deliver prescriptions. So the way we used the maps was there would be a request to pick up a prescription from Eyemouth Pharmacy, but the people that were picking it up weren't actually local to Reston or Auchencrow. So I would use the maps and take a screenshot and send it to them on their phone so they knew the exact location of where they were delivering the prescription to, and also any medical information they needed to know. And we found the maps invaluable because we could identify assets and problems. And we used it again just recently with Storm Arwen and then the power cut for 5 days. And we could use the maps again to show clusters of where we've lost power. So just to reiterate, really, the maps are a good tool for any community council or any group.
Thank you. I mean, it's really helpful to hear sort of the other uses, I suppose, beyond kind of what we're talking about tonight. But all of the people who've spoken about their experiences with maps so far, if there are other community councils who'd like to talk to you after the meeting and kind of get in touch, would that be okay for us to sort of set that up for you afterwards?
That's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Okie dokie. Lynn, could we move on to the next slide then, and we will let Chris take the floor. Thank you.
Yeah. Lynn, shall I take control so I can... Oh yeah, got it. I've got the slide deck. Thank you. Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Chris Muse. I'm owner and director of a company called Local Authority Tech, which is a not-for-profit CIC, and we run a product called Parish Online. But you'll have heard from it so far today as Community Map Scotland. Traditionally, Parish Online was only available in England and Wales, and so this is a project bringing it up into Scotland. So the Community Map Scotland project was a 1-year project to give you free mapping software to kickstart community projects in Scotland. This is a combination of my company, the Improvement Service, Planning Aid Scotland, who you'll hear from Paul later on, and the Community Council's liaison network within Improvement Service as well. So we did this just for fun, essentially. We were all talking for quite a few years about it, and we were trying to get funding for the project, and then just decided to do it. So here we are. The reason why we started to do it is because some of us were community geeks, some of us were map geeks. We put our heads together and we realized that mapping and community councils can create some really good things, primarily in local place plans, but also community resilience, social levelling up, health and well-being, many other things in a local area. Me as a map geek, I know that maps can save the world. So, why not try and get them into the hands of more people? So, we already had a thing that worked. So since 2009, we've had a product called Parish Online, and it's got over 2,800 subscribers in England and Wales. And it helps them on a daily basis with their asset management, their decision making, their event planning, their neighbourhood planning, whatever they want to do with it, they use it as this tool, and it's become an essential tool for many councils in England and Wales. Now, I appreciate that their funding model exists and their setup is slightly different. So that's why we decided to make the software free for Scottish community councils for as long as we could. We also know that you guys have the best local knowledge. So whereas the higher tier councils have more strategic overview, you know what's going on the ground. So you are best placed to really understand how a local area should develop and change. Where things flood, what's going on with the drains down there. You know it all, but you have the most informal and underfunded IT structure. That still applies in England and Wales as well, but even more so with you guys. So again, giving you the tools to be able to do things is really important, and it would harness that local knowledge. We also know that change really happens really locally. So talking about COVID response, that happened at parish and community level. Yes, there was a lot of stuff that happened higher up. Some wine happened, but you guys were there setting up hubs to get people secure and safe and supported. So that can be visualized on a map as well. Also coordinated on a map. So Parish Online itself is a mapping portal, like Tim has shown you. There's lots of different mapping portals out there you can choose from. Ours is the only one that's been fine-tuned for town, parish and community councils for the last 15 years or so. And because the people who are using this aren't necessarily the most IT experts, they're not the ones with the most amount of time available to them. It means that this software has to be as easy to use as possible and pick up and use. So there's no software to install. It's all secure and encrypted, and we take care of all of that for you. Normally, to keep the servers up and running and to keep these lights on, we charge an affordable annual subscription. But as we said, for any community wanting to start, we'll give you a year's free to really get to grips with it and really use it for the projects that you're looking at. So your borders planning, your local place plans, anything you want to, it can be useful. We've collaborated with Improvement Service. They host, they curate data from lots of different local authorities across Scotland, all of them in fact, to bring lots of interesting data together. We've got all the software, but we didn't necessarily have all the data. So the Improvement Service's spatial hub has been connected to Community Map Scotland. So you get lots of extra data, like weekly planning application lists, historic information, listed buildings, various other bits. We're also plugging in data from SEPA, so we've got lots of flood data as well. And again, we are the software people, Improvement Service are the data people, and we needed someone with the real specialist knowledge in how how local place plans and how community projects are put together, and that's where Planning Aid Scotland come in. So my peer Paul will talk to you about what he does. So that gives us our 3 dream team. We've got the software, the data, and the expertise to help you. In terms of using the software, I've got a few little pre-canned videos here, but I'll log into the software in a bit and show it to you in a bit more detail. But essentially, it gives you some editing tools. This isn't just a viewing tool where you can go and look at some maps. You can go and create your own maps. So we have these little tools here where you can go and draw out an area, whatever it represents, add in some information about it, save it, and that saves directly onto our server, secure to your account. But it means that you don't have to worry about your computer exploding and losing everything. It's stored in the computer. It's stored on our servers and available to use whenever you like. So whether you log on your main computer, your phone, or you go to New Zealand and log in on a different computer, all your information is going to be there. So the majority of the information you store in your CMS account is private to you. It's private to your account. You can have multiple people log into your account from your team and your group, but it's private to your organization. However, there are some layers that we have a little mark with says collaborative on, which are made available across boundaries. So defibrillators is an example of one. So when you plot your defibrillators onto the map, if you wanted to see a distribution of where they are, you can see that in context to where all the other defibrillators are. As you can see, I did that video quite a while ago and there's not many on there, and they're all down in England and Wales. But that's the concept, is you can see your information alongside other people's as well. Again, it's quite a complex GIS mappy thing to do, but we just made it easy, so it's just available to you. We've also got some quite fun tools in there. So one of them is we've got a printing tool, but we've got this travel time tool, which allows you to click on the map and show you how far you can get in a certain amount of time. So in this example here, it's showing how far you can cycle in 5, 10 and 15 minutes. And this can help guide your decision making on, where do we need new cycle infrastructure? Where do we need new paths? What's the catchment for a particular asset that we have in the village? So you can look at it from both ways. How far can you get, but also how easy it is for people to get in. So this uses the road, cycle and path network to show you that information. And again, doing this is quite a complex thing to do. So we've just made it easy where you just click on the map and it happens. So we've got measuring tools, we've got the isochrone tools and various other bits and bobs in there to give you some analysis as well. And we've got publishing tools. So Tim showed this really well, but within the software, you can print to a PDF or an image file, and that includes all the copyright stuff that you need. And it then goes, then you can save it onto your computer and you've got it there for forever. We've also got a public mapping tool, which allows you to create an interactive map that you can plonk onto your website or share as a link. And that's associated with your account, as Tim said, and it means that when you change things, it changes in that interactive map as well. So that's really good for drafting stuff within your account and then also sharing it out to the wider world. So that's the functionality. We've had really good initial feedback and take up of this. We've had 100 community councils subscribe to it. It's over 100 now. That's good, but there's 1,300 community councils out there. So there's many more councils that aren't taking this up yet. And we're still supporting it. We're still giving community councils and groups a year's free of this software. So please do spread the word. I'm hoping your little cluster is going to get really populated with green blobs now when you go and sign up. But we've really enjoyed this, working with Improvement Service and Planning Aid Scotland. It's growing and there's more and more demand for this kind of tool for your community planning and your community work. An example, Thornhill and Blair Drummond, they are drafting their local place plan at the moment. They are plotting things like their development areas, where they want housing to go, their green spaces, where they don't want housing to go, what their village extent is, so defining where they can create more intensive housing rather than sprawl, and also looking at where their key businesses and community assets are. They're also I was talking to them the other day, and they're doing some really good stuff as well. Like, they know where all the pinch points are for dangerous crossings, so they've mapped those, and that will inform their infrastructure plans. But as they said, it's really helping them make decisions together. Visualizing something on a map, a picture paints 1,000 words, and you can get a lot more easy, positive consensus on things than if you're just chatting over a cup of tea. Chat over a cup of tea, but look at a map while you're doing it. To sign up to this application, we have a very easy link. So it's parish-online.co.uk/sign up. We'll put this into the chat link so you don't have to memorize that. You'll go through a little form like this. So you'll go and search for your community council area. If you're not the community council itself, don't worry, sign up for the area that you are in. It then takes you through. Just go for a 30-day free trial, because that will give you 30 days free and then a year's free. So you actually get 13 months. Even though I've just highlighted the other one, ignore that. It gives you a bit longer if you do for the trial. It gives you a preview of what your price would be beyond our year's free. But if you put the code CMS12 in, then that zeroes that and gives you that year's free subscription. We've talked about licensing for mapping. Don't worry about this too much, but do go and register for the PSGA. I know the person in Scottish Government who deals with it, and I'd love him to have lots and lots and lots of applications on his desk, because it'll wind him up. Give him some work to do. Essentially, it's a centrally funded agreement to give you as a community council access to the premium data that normally Ordnance Survey would charge for. So it means you go from data like that to that. But it's centrally funded, so it's free for you. So just go and sign up to that. You can get to that from os.uk/PSGA. That's just a form, takes a few days. You get a little code, and then you put that into Parish Online when you sign up to CMS, and there you go, it's done. You don't have to wait for that code to come through. You can sign up to CMS straight away and then add it in later if you need to. Just to confuse you further, there's actually 2 mapping licenses you can get. There's a PSGA and then there's APGB. They are exactly the same thing, but one's for the OS mapping and one's for aerial photography, to give you nice crispy aerial photography that's updated on a regular basis. Don't do that one first, do the PSGA, and then once you've done that, our software will prompt you to go, oh, do you want to do this one as well? It's a single click and off you go. Before I go into, I'm going to go and demo the software, which is always a scary thing to do, but I'll do it. I just want to reel through some FAQs just to fend these off, because we've had these questions before. So subscriptions are for the council rather than an individual. So in Ivan's problem, where an individual signed up, but it's actually a community council account, that's fine. We can add him into it. Yes, you can publish maps to your website and to the public. Yes, you can sign up if you're just a community group and not the community council. It's fine. You might get stuck on the PSGA bit, but you can still use the software, so don't let it put you off. And can the local authority share their local plan to us for context? And yes, and we were talking to the Scottish Borders team about this the other day, about sharing data down. So they can put the data into the software at one level and it shares out to all the councils below. Can I see land ownership? Not at the moment. That's something we're looking to add. Do we sell your data? No. Can you add, blood data from this organisation? Ask us. We'll try. we'll go and talk to that organisation and see if we can get that information put in if it's useful for you. When you sign up to the PSGA, you get a login for the OS Data Hub, which confuses a lot of people. And it's like, oh, do I have to go and use that? No, all you need is that PSGA number. It starts with AC. That's the only one you need. You don't have to really worry about the Data Hub. And if the data's wrong, contact the data owner. So contact Ordnance Survey if you think the Ordnance Survey mapping is wrong. So this is a little bit detailed, but it has come up in other sessions. Slightly flippant one. If we create a local place plan or a borders plan, will it be ignored by the planning authority? I hope not. We've heard really positive things so far. We can take the mapping data that you've created with your permission, share it to the higher tier authority, and then it gets put into their planning system so that when they go and look at areas and look at constraints, your information comes up. So it's really important to map this out. Otherwise, it gets put into a document, not read and ignored. Whereas in a map, it has more power to be visualized and used for planning. Do you have to do this? No, you don't have to do this. This is purely opt-in. You don't have to use our software. You can try. We're just trying to persuade you to use mapping information at the moment. And how much does it cost? Well, it's free for a year, and then we've actually just published slightly different pricing. So 46% of all community councils will pay just 50 quid a year for it. Put that in context of a Netflix subscription, and it's 2 months of a Netflix subscription. It's not very much, and it's really powerful for your community. So we do persuade you to use it beyond the initial period. Okay, Paul, you're on here now, aren't you? Shall I share my? Have you got slides that you want to share now, and then we'll go into the software?
No, I was just going to do a little spin first while you set yourself up to screen share.
Sure.
To do.
You go for it then.
Chris, could we just pause for questions a second, please? Because I see we've got a hand just now.
Yeah, sure.
Keith, I think it's you. Sorry, I can't quite see it on my screen. Keith.
Yeah, it is me. But I'm Keith Dickinson. Let me say, Chris, that was really good. I'm really impressed by the system, Parish Online. It looks manageable to use. My comments, though, relate to the differences between parishes in England and community councils, or community councils in England and community councils in Scotland.
Yep.
And budgets.
Yep.
We have exceptionally small budgets in community councils in Scotland, of the order of 100 or 2, maybe a bit more, but they are very limited. So it's quite different from the equivalent, what appears to be the equivalent in England, where they have tens of thousands of pounds of budgets and responsibilities for doing other things.
Yep.
Now, that's not meant to put a dampener on this, but it makes me think that there is a role for the Borders Council to take in terms of, well, advocating the use of Parish Online, which I think is worth doing, and actually starting to, because I wouldn't want people to be put off because they look at their budget, there's virtually no budget. Can we spend even this modest amount of money a year down the line? And I realise you're giving it free to get people started. I think this is so important that this should be sponsored by the Borders Council. And certainly for any area that is actively engaged in a community-led plan or a place plan, whatever we want to call them, I think they should get this as part of the contribution that the Borders Council make to them.
Okay, so I'll sorry. Yeah, I'll just to rattle through the Q&A, but yeah, thanks for that. I agree. I don't want to charge you. For the last year or so, I've been trying to look at centrally funded ways of doing this, and we'll still have those conversations with people to try and make it funded at higher tiers. I think that's right. And in the interim, all we can do is, we know what our costs are, so we've tried to push it down to at cost as best we can. We're using our not-for-profit status to reinvest the money into it. And for the vast majority of people, it's the cost of an engine takeaway.
Look, this is not me complaining about you having to make enough money to keep your business going. Absolutely not. My remarks are to those around the table who have roots into the, well, Scottish government, local authorities. And the fact that we need to connect this up with activities that both those organisations, the Scottish Government and our local authorities, are trying to promote within communities.
Yep.
And they can't be doing that at the same time as not providing the communities with the necessary resource in order to do what they want to do. I'm wanting communities to do this because I think it's really important for communities to be using this tool. So I'm just trying to find any way to remove any potential barrier.
Sure, absolutely. And that's something we're talking to lots of different people about.
Yeah, Keith, I guess just to kind of come in that from the Borders Council perspective, you know that we're very keen to support the community-led action that is happening across the borders at the moment. And I think where we are at the moment is raising awareness of this tool and trying to understand the benefits that it can offer and make people aware of that. But certainly we can talk about how that can look going forward, because we certainly don't want people to be put off using it because they see that as a barrier. So I think we just have to explore the avenues that might be able to support that. So happy to pick that up with you after the call as well. Beth, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris. It's really helpful to understand a bit more about the tool, and obviously as somebody supporting community-led planning, I've been promoting it to groups. I feel I understand a bit more now to be able to equip me to do that, so that's really helpful, having not used it myself. One question I had about the years, just to clarify about the year free, is that going to continue, or are you saying that the prices that you just talked about, are they for after the year, or are they what is going to be the new situation? Will there be prices for the first year?
Yeah.
At some point as well?
So yes, we had it initially start of 2023. We set it as a year, so it was going to be all of 2023 was going to be funded. But then because people were finding out about it and picking up at it at different times, that's staggered. So if a community council is finding out about it now and wants to sign up now, they get that year's free. So the end point of it is actually staggered depending on when you find out about it. So we'll keep that going. But yeah, after that period's been used, then yes, it switches over into currently a self-funded model.
Okay, so any community council that doesn't know about it, just starting out, can still have the year free.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Thanks, Beth. David.
Yeah, hello. In the previous talk, Tim mentioned at the end this 30-minute webinar, which I thought was the idea of introducing the concept to community councils. I'm in a position as an individual, but I have links to community groups and community councils where I'm positioned to introduce it so that they can understand what it's all about. Is there a link to this with this 30-minute webinar? Is that something that would be useful to introduce community councils or groups to the whole concept?
Yes, I'd say it would. If it's the link that I think Tim's shared, then yes.
Yeah, is the link on the chat? How do we get hold? That was just the question. Is there a link on the chat, or?
Yeah, it's in Tim's slides. So if someone, Lynn or someone can bring that link up, then we can put it into the chat. Yeah.
Yeah, David, we will share all of the information that's been shared from this evening as well, including all the links with you all, as well as a recording from this webinar. So we can help to kind of spread the word on the use and adoption as well, hopefully. But if there is anything that you would like now, we can certainly pull that out from the slides for you.
Okay, fine. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay, Anyone else? Any more questions before we move on to Paul's section? No. Paul, the floor is all yours.
Thanks very much. My name is, as you can see on the slide, Paul Eads. I'm Social Enterprise Manager for Planning Aid Scotland. I've just put my email in the chat if you want to follow up with any questions. Planning Aid Scotland is a charity and social enterprise. My particular job is either working alongside communities as a project manager to help them to develop community action plans and local place plans, or the other part of my time, what I do is I train communities to do this for themselves. And we are on the framework. We're one of the suppliers that communities can call on as part of developing their plans. Put another link there. But in particular, I just want to say that this opportunity to create spatial plans and local place plans has really caught on across Scotland. It seems to have released a massive amount of energy amongst community councils, particularly, who are really valuing the opportunity to have a very proactive role. So we have been receiving a lot of requests to actually come and project manage stuff for communities. And we're only able to take up some of those. So what we're also doing is trying to develop all the resources that we can to create a kind of centre for best practice that will enable communities to access information. So you can go to our resource page. It has links to a guide to community delivery of local place plans, and it has a number of other helpful links. And we also have a series of training seminars that you can come to us to, where we can offer support in a whole different dimension from cradle to grave in terms of developing action plans and local place plans. The reason why I'm here is that the thing that I really want to do tonight is that I'm aware that there are groups of people here in the audience who are in the process of working with Naomi and others to develop plans for their community. Whether those are plans that are hopefully going to have an output that will be acceptable for assessment, potentially for future investment through the Borderlands Place Plan process, and or developing local place plans that can be submitted to the planning authority for future assessment and inclusion within their local development plan. So what Chris and I are basically going to do is Chris very kindly is going to take you through CMS and the specific functions, and I'm going to take you through some of the specific criteria that you are faced with if you're creating a place plan for accessing Borderlands Deal money, or you are creating a local place plan that you want to get validated. What are the components of those that you are being asked to do where a map function would be beneficial to you? So I want this to be as practical as it possibly can be. And so what we're going to start with, I'm not screen sharing this, but you will all hopefully be familiar with the guidance document that's being shared with communities by Naomi and her team around how to develop place plans as part of the Borderlands Deal process. And there's a table in that document which lists out a number of elements or chapters that you'd be required to do for it to be well written. The first section is the introduction, and it requires that you explain the geography covered of your plan and or the wider area, the town or the wider outlying area or settlements. Now, that could be that you're doing that for your community council, and Chris here is showing you that on a base layer of OS mapping, there is a overlay that brings in the community council boundaries for every community council in the whole of Scotland. So if you want to express that really simply within a local place plan or a Borderlands place plan, you could export that or through the export function. I know Chris is wanting to keep data within the system, and that's a good thing to do as well, but you might be creating a Word document or a PDF. So if you, Chris, if you could zoom across to the Borderlands area, Scottish Borders area, you could zoom in on one of the community council boundaries. Don't know, just a smaller one like Kelso, something like that, or Smailholm. Perfect. That could be quite good. And you can just export that and plop it into a document. So that would be a really simple way of expressing your community. If your boundary is the community council boundary, that's a simple way to do that. But you can also do a bespoke boundary, which Chris is going to do. So maybe you just want to go round the Smailholm itself, perhaps, or just some of the areas, not include Floors Castle. So you can create a boundary and put that in the map, so you can tailor this to your purposes. Again, export it as you require. So that would be a really helpful thing to do. You can export as a PNG or a PDF, and that would be a really helpful thing to do for that first introductory section for the Borderlands Place Plan that you might be putting together. The next area that could be helpful for you, number 3 in that document, is describing the town, which is an opportunity to go even deeper, or area, not just town, even deeper, using maps. So you could use any of the Ordnance Survey layers and use that to explain exactly, to create a series of images or maps that to explain within your local place plan exactly what you want to say about your town. Now, lists here is that you may want to describe, in describing your town, its demographics, its local economic structure, its housing stock, its infrastructure, morality, and its travel to work patterns. But it also encourages deprivation, educational achievement, industrial development land, visitor attractions, retail offer, empty commercial, retail, industrial units. Some of these may be applicable, some of them not. So what could CMS do for you in helping to explain some of this more simply using maps? Well, the first one, Chris, just showing, want to show poverty or relative deprivation in your area. There's a layer that Chris is just showing here with Gala Shields that shows very clearly what the index of multiple deprivation zones are for any given part of your area. So here in Gala, the red areas are the ones that are considered a little bit more deprived, and the blue ones are less deprived. So that could be a very simple and powerful graphic just to begin expressing that. In terms of educational achievement, now the maps obviously complement written data. The educational achievement requirement, now there's a layer for educational catchment areas for primary and secondary, non-denominational and denominational schools. So Chris, you can see, is now adding these layers. So you could express in map form the particular catchment area for secondary and primary schools in your area to try and show in your map, okay, this is the particular catchment area or school that we talk in your report, that we're talking about. In terms of industrial and development land, visitor attractions, retail offer, this is probably a little bit more bespoke. So some of that could be about drawing in local development plan data. As Chris mentioned earlier, there's opportunities to draw in higher level data. Here, first of all, though, he's showing you the address points that are particularly pertinent for your area. And which ones are commercial, which ones are residential, which ones are dual use. So instantly you've got a certain baseline of data that you can begin to work with in CMS to start expressing a description of your town in that chapter, that section 3. And we're kind of rattling through this, unfortunately, in terms of time, but we just wanted to give you a sense. There's no better thing that you can do with Community Map Scotland than experiment. I want to say this, but Chris might push back, but basically don't feel worried about breaking it. Just go in and start playing and seeing what's available. Anyway, so there's that. And then another...
We're happy with it being broken, Paul, don't worry.
With it being broken?
You can try.
Okay. The last one I just want to show you is that in that description of the town, the invite is to maybe explain where public transport and accessibility issues or realities are. So Chris is just going to show you again, there's a very useful function. So you can bring up the actual national cycle network through Sustrans. There's also a layer for core paths, which should be in there. There we go. Chris is very good at moving around this adroitly. I'm not nearly this fast, so that's excellent. But there's also the isochrone function, which is Chris showed this a little bit earlier. But this is basically, if you want to talk about, you might have heard of the idea of 20-minute neighborhoods. I can't really go into that, but basically what isochrones do is, what you can see here is Chris, you can choose car, walking or cycling. Choose an initial distance, 5 minutes, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and we're on walking here. And then you can click a point on the map and the green area will show roughly how far you can get in 5 minutes, roughly, then orange 10 minutes, then red is 15 minutes. Now that's helpful because you can click on a point and this is how far you can get from there, but you could also click on a point and say, well, this is how much time it takes to get to that. So you could have an asset in your community that you feel there should be more of on the other side of town, and you could use an isochrone map to go, okay, well, this is accessible. We've only got one of these in our community, a health centre. That's on that side of town and it's accessible by foot in this way. But actually, what do other people in the other side of town do, and how do they get there, and how easy is that? So that's the isochrone function, which can also be exported. It's quite powerful. You car, bus, and walking.
Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could I just ask a quick question on that? How sophisticated is that tool? Does it identify if there's a safe walking route, for example? Does it take that into account when it's doing the mapping?
No, but Chris can better answer that.
Yeah, it's purely infrastructure. So yeah, it doesn't upvote or downvote things depending on any kind of safety elements of it. It's just raw transport network.
Yeah, so I guess like if you wanted to walk, but there was only a dual carriageway, for example, that connected you, does it understand that?
And yes, it understands that. Yeah. It's not going to send you down the M1.
Yeah, or just like if there's a rural road, but it's actually single track or what, that's. I guess it was just trying to understand what the kind of parameters were, but that's helpful. Helen, did you have a follow-up question to that?
Oh, you're on mute, Helen. Oh.
Yeah, just picking up on that issue in terms of accessibility and wheelchair users. So things like drop curbs and, getting from A to B with people with mobility issues. So again, it's that sensitivity. So it's just, I guess it's not going to be that.
No, it's purely the network as it sees it. Yeah, but it's an interesting point. This is used as a kind of initial stab to go, okay, what is the normal travel time for this area? Sure. And then there'll be nuance in it. You see that this isn't going down to, the path level. It's a rough guess, but it's giving you an overview better than just concentric circles.
I just want to bring something up. So Naomi's just put in the chat, Borderlands guidance applies to the Borderlands towns, Eyemouth, Galashiels, Hawick and Jedburgh specifically, but offers helpful guidance for the information that can be contained within a place plan. This document that I'm going through, if you're not one of those 4 towns and you want to create a community action plan or a local place plan, you don't necessarily have to do the things that I'm saying. Okay, you can. That could be helpful. It might help you with other investments, but there isn't a mechanism using this detail to unlock actual investment money from the Borderlands deal. Okay, just want to make that really clear. So this guidance that I'm going through is just for places like Smailholm is just an exemplar. You could do this. So then the last number 4, it says assets, needs and challenges. PAS wouldn't go into this detail in many cases when it's designing a community action plan or a local place plan, but you could do if you wanted to. So assets, opportunities, needs and challenges, number 4, it suggests that you might want to put in where your colleges, your industries, your visitor attractions, your transport connections are. Okay. Now, one of the things, if you are just using this document as a reference for your particular plan, there's nothing in this document that pushes you to think about climate adaptation. Okay, I would really want to encourage any community that's thinking about developing a community action plan, a local place plan, okay, which are the two specific types of plan that I think of when we use the generic term place plan, to think really carefully about putting climate adaptation right at the heart of the issues that you're trying to plan for over the next 10 years, because they are going to be so central, and it's a massive focus of the Scottish Government. That's not in, that information isn't actually in the sort of guidance document that Naomi's referring to here. But for example, you can get access to the EPC ratings to the extent that the data is current of all the houses in the area. You may also want to put in information about or access information about flood risk. So Chris is going to also show the SEPA flood risk map layer, which will show you both for fluvial or river, pluvial or rain potentially, and coastal. Oh no, we don't have rain, we don't have surface water, do we, Chris?
No, so it's river and coastal at the moment. There is surface water available. We're looking at adding as well.
Okay, so there's also some flood risk data. For example, if you want to talk about some of the adaptation issues that your place might be required to look at. Now, so if you're creating a place plan, a community action plan, you may also want to be creating a local place plan. What's the difference? Well, a local place plan can be used to be submitted to Naomi's planning department to influence the local development plan that will be produced over the next few years and will be adopted probably late 20s. So you may want to be thinking that far ahead. But if you're doing that, then you're also going to have to comply with a couple of other criteria if you're wanting to get that local place plan validated. Which in particular, there's an additional mapping requirement. So local place plans require 2 maps as a bare minimum. One is a map that shows the boundary that you're working within, a bit like the way we talked about earlier. If that's a settlement boundary, you can create it bespoke. If it's a community council boundary, there's a layer for that. The other map that you need to do is if you're putting forward a series of proposals to be considered by the local authority planning departments, then you have to have a map that shows clearly where those proposals are. So you would number the proposals 1 to 10, say if you've got 10 proposals, and then you'd have a map that basically says, well, proposal 1 is here, proposal 2 is here, proposal 3 is there. There is a layer, site location marker layer, which Chris is showing you just now, where you can add very easily such numbers specifically where you want them to go on your map, and then export that to make your second required map for validation of an LPP. I'm going to stop there, apart from 2 more things. One, Paz has found it really, really helpful to use it. There is another tool that I just want to highlight by a different company. It's called PlaceCheck. And you may want to use an online piece of software to actually gather people's comments about your place. Now, if you go to, I'm just going to put a link in. We've been using this in North Berwick just now, and I'm going to send you a link to the map that's been created as a result. You can bring that up on your screen. But basically, for community councils, it's a free-to-use piece of software. You can have it defined for your area, and then people have the opportunity to go online either through their phone or their computer, and they can plop a pin anywhere they want to and add a comment, a like, a dislike, or a change that they require. So it's a spatial consultation tool that you can also access. That's an aside. Chris has also just showed the Historic Environment Scotland layer, so that will import and show exactly where all of the listed buildings and conservation areas are in your particular area, if you need that as a way of very quickly showing key assets, key historical assets in your area. And the other thing I would say is that some people want to use physical tools. So you can create physical maps for use in your consultation processes by exporting a particular map from this program and then have it printed. And then you can have a physical map out in front of you on a table for people to talk over, which is like a really excellent, helpful resource tool for you to use. And you can even put different layers on that map with different information if you're having a particular topic focused conversation. I'm going to stop there for now, if that's okay. I'm sure there are questions, but I'll hand back to Naomi to field how she wants to go forward.
I think you're on mute, Naomi, if you were talking there.
Sorry, I was. I'm feeling in at the technical side of things. Keith, would you like to come in?
Oh, right, okay. Again, I'm really fascinated by all this stuff. I'm interested in the challenges of transport and accessibility in deeply rural areas. So I think I heard somebody say, I think it was you, Paul, said, you know, if you're interested in people's journeys to work. Don't know whether I heard that correctly, but what transport information layers are there available? Most of the information seems to be physical locations and the attributes of physical locations rather than the characteristics of movement.
I could probably field that actually, Paul. I'm not sure if you said anything about that.
Yeah, what I mentioned that there's in the guidance, if you're going to follow the guidance that Naomi's put together really helpfully, one of the things you might want to talk about is commuting and travel to work. Yeah. I didn't specifically cover that in terms of what CMS can do, but Chris can maybe indicate what he thinks. I have something else I could share with you as well, but Chris, if you want.
I mean, I'm really interested in this.
Yeah, well, there's lots of data out there. So if there are other data sets that we think would be useful, then we can put them in. As an example, we got asked by a few parishes in Cornwall recently to put in some data from the census about holiday homes. It had been published, so we turned it into a map, published it, and it showed where all the hotspots were for holiday home ownership and sort of presenting that as an issue and how to sort of get communities going again. Relate that to transport. There's almost certainly data out there that might help, and it's something that we can try and put in.
I think. Well, I'm interested in what Paul's going to say, but I'm on a transport subcommittee of the South of Scotland Regional Economic Partnership. There is a paucity of information on travel, which is why I picked that up. And so no doubt there will be some data sets, but it's pretty thin. But I just a comment. It did strike me that one of the ways of using the isochrone data might be to plop a pin on every bus stop and see how far or how many people are within a particular walk time of a bus stop. And that would probably show the communities that were, seriously disadvantaged in terms of accessibility. Sorry, Paul, you had some other thought on this.
Yeah, not at all. So there is a website you may or may not be aware of. It's called Understanding Scotland's Places. I put a link into the chat, and I'm just going to I think I can screen share. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so it works for particular towns or places, not really on a community council scale, but you can type in Galashiels, for example, and it collates a whole bunch of data for that particular town. And one of the bits of data it collates is it calls a commuter flow map.
All right.
And if I'm honest, I'm not entirely sure where that data's coming from. I'm sure it's reliable, and I'm sure it's available. You can find out on the site, but it basically gives you the opportunity to see where the key flows of commuter traffic are into and out of Gala. I won't spend too much time on that, but maybe you didn't know that existed. It's one bit of relatively easy information you can access.
I haven't seen that, so thanks.
I don't see any other hands. I was just going to say that the Understanding Scottish Places uses the census data to gather the information, we believe. We had a presentation from them on a previous webinar, which was really helpful, actually. And just for everyone's awareness, the census data is due to be updated come the new financial year, although it'll take a little bit of time to do that. There has been a bit of work done around the South Edinburgh and South East Scotland City Region deal, growth deal project around commuting times for employability. So if that is information that people are interested in, we can speak to that too about getting some of that made available to people too.
Yeah, that's really helpful, Naomi. So just be aware that that data is going to be the old census data. And of course, this year, if you sign up to the newsletter from Census Scotland, it's literally this year they're going to start rolling out what is effectively the 2022 census, although it should have been 2021. And gradually we're going to get more and more information, and hopefully behind the scenes this information such as USP data will be updated with the new stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Chris,
Naomi.
how will that affect the data that you have within your system? Will that just kind of trickle through as the improvement service sort of picks up that new census data as well?
Yep, so we have feeds, we have a direct link with improvement service, so as new data sets and updates come through, then that gets filtered through.
Great, thank you. Keith, your hand's still up. Did you have a follow-up point you wanted to come in on? No. Was there any other questions from anyone on that? I mean, I think that was really quite comprehensive of all the different things that can be done with the tool. I guess it's just trying to keep up with Chris's pace around all the different things turned on and off. But I guess part of it is just going to be the playing with it and actually kind of understanding how that works and the reassurance that we can't break it.
Yeah, sorry, my that wasn't exactly me in training mode. I was in just let's play and clicks and buttons mode, which you can also do as well. It's not something you can really break. Worst case scenario, you press refresh on your browser and it all goes back to the start again and you start again. But yeah, we've got a knowledge base with kind of step by step. Here's how you'd add a feature in, click, 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 that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's all available.
Beth.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering whether it would be possible to access this as somebody as a support organisation, even though not public sector, just to be able to have a play around with it, to be able to support groups with it.
So we are limiting it towards community councils, and that purely because it's easier on a mapping license basis. So our engagement with improvement service is us sharing the data to community councils because there's public sector limitations on that data, and the premium ordnance survey mapping, which you don't have to have the premium ordnance survey mapping, but it makes it all look so much better. So there's a little bit of a gap between what public sector get and what anyone else us as individuals get. I would recommend, there are not loopholes, but there's ways around it. So if you're, I'd recommend working with a community council, basically as a subcontractor license. You can work together on a project as long as it's a community project and it's within the scope of a community council. Then it's something that a associated community group could access and use. It's actually different to how England works, because you're right, there are more formal parish councils with budgets and administrative person and councillors associated with it and all of that. So it's easier in England and Wales to do. So while it's a little bit more informal in Scotland, I think we can get away with that collaborative approach. And we're not really the gatekeepers of that. It's the PSGA team who decide whether you can have the data, and improvement service as well. So we just have to be mindful of that as the software providers are dishing the data out. But we'll try and get it in your hands.
Chris, can I just ask on the administrative side of that then, if a community council registers with a single email address, is that the only access, or can multiple email addresses be added to their account? So
No,
if Beth were to be a subcontractor, for example.
Yeah, so the first person to sign up has God mode for the accounts, and then they can add additional users onto it as well. So they can add other admins on, or they can add other people who are either read-only or just have editing access. But yes, you can all log in, so it's a collaborative thing. And we see this, that you log in on multiple accounts and all have a Zoom session and talk over the maps, which is quite a nice thing to do. It's the digital equivalent of having a laminated map on a table and sitting around it. So it's used quite a lot.
Yeah, that's quite helpful actually, because I think if you are talking about interactive sessions, particularly with multiple kind of councils, for example, community councils, for example, it takes it's an entirely different dynamic, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I think that's helpful to understand as well. And Beth, that's maybe something we can talk about with the communities that you're supporting. Yeah, Keith.
So it was just following up on that. The practicalities include place plans in the area that I am, which is Gavington, Fogo, Polworth, working with Duns and 2 other community councils. So the plan will include maybe 4 community council areas. So I had just assumed that, you know, somebody within that group would have access and they would just broaden out their plan. Do people who have access to Parish Online have access to data out with the specific community council boundaries that they have, that you think they are, well, not that you think, that are documented?
So do you mean that if you've drawn something on your plan, can Duns under their license see what you've drawn? Is that what you mean, Keith?
No, I think what would happen is that the people who were developing the plan would not be developing it for Gavington or Duns, but they would be developing it with a boundary which encapsulated the 3 or 4 different community council areas.
Yeah, that happens, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're being tidy about it, then get all 3 community councils to sign up to the PSGA as well. It's no big deal to do.
Yeah.
But yes, it can be done.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So Chris, if all 3 of them were signed up, could they see each other's information? If they were all accessing it under 3 separate licenses?
You would just use one account to do the plan. So yeah, so sign up with Community Council A, and even if that coverage includes B and C, then just use account A and ignore B and C.
Okay, that's grand. Thank you. Beth, did you want to come in, or did that answer your question? Thank you. Debbie.
Hi, I just wondered, Naomi, you'll probably know this better than me, but there are a few communities who are producing local police plans under the Development Trust. And what happens if they don't necessarily have any community council members as part of that development trust who are looking to take forward a local police plan? Is there a way that they can still use this tool, Chris, or would they need to have at least one member from a community council to access the mapping tool?
So we're happy for a development trust to sign up to the software.
Oh, brilliant.
The only hurdle is whether they can get the PSGA license, which then activates all the better data. That's the only thing. It's out of our control, really. I've had quite a lot of conversations with people about it. It's just a nuance of how the Scottish system works at this tier at the moment.
It's just to say, because community councils are considered to be a statutory part of the planning system, then OS recognised community councils as being allowed a PSGA. But OS can make quite a lot of money out of commercial licenses and licenses for other organisations. So PAS, as a charity, we weren't able to access a PSGA licence. So when we do stuff, we get the community council to sign up for it, and then we can use that map. I just want to throw something in here and take it with a pinch of salt, but the goal of this is to enable data to be in the hands of local people to use for the public good. If a community group, in my opinion, this is purely me, Paul, not Paz, not anybody else. If a community group uses OS data for the public good and prints it, and OS are not happy with that, then they would have to come after that community group, in my mind, and actually say to them, we're going to take you to court for using our data for public good in your area. Ultimately, I want you to take this with a pinch of salt, but I think that's really quite unlikely. If you're, as long as you're not using it for commercial purposes, maybe there's some scope there, but you make your own choices around that.
Well, that's kind of how in England it works. So if you've got a group associated with a parish council, and you're doing what's under parish business, so which again, if you can go and stand up in court and say, I did this project and it was for the good of the parish, then I think you're in a good position.
Sometimes
talk to the PSGA team at Ordnance Survey, tell them your situation, tell them who you are, what your organisation is, and they'll make a judgment on it and help you out where they can. They're nice people.
Institutions get a little bit caught up in process rather than goal.
Okay, so I guess what we're saying is that this is about fair use of the information, but actually coming back to Keith's point earlier, if we could get all the community councils to sign up to the licenses and have it available, then adding the development trust, for example, as an admin on that account, then allows them to access it even if the community council doesn't want to do it themselves. So I think there's just something about us looking at that infrastructure piece and bringing all that together to help make sure people like Helen at See the Change can access what they want to do underneath those parameters. So I think we can take that away as an action, and potentially work with you guys, Beth, to kind of look at that as well. Did you want to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, just to say it's worth to point out that for local place plans, even if a development trust is registering it, it needs to go across the desk at least of the community council and the surrounding community council areas. So at some point in the whole process, a community council is going to have to be involved. So even if that's just, okay, yes, we can sign up to the license and let you access it, that's not a big ask. And it also gets you sort of talking with them in the first place, even if they're not up for getting involved in the process. You know, they are going to have to be involved at some stage.
If you've got one in your area, some areas might not even have a community council registered, unfortunately.
That's right. Yeah, there are some. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, because we do have some in abeyance at the moment as well. So again, it's just kind of dealing with that side of it all. But yeah, I think we can take that away and look at that as an action to kind of iron out. Keith, did you want to have the final word?
I don't know whether it'll be the final word, but I agree with Paul. And just to reassure anybody who's worrying about some of these agreements, when Tim first gave me the forms from OS to fill in, I read them. Tim was very much more cautious than I was. My defence in signing it was, look, if we misbehave in some way unintentionally, there is no way that we are going to be taken anywhere, because we're doing this for the public good. So it's just to reinforce what Paul said. From a practical point of view, I've been through that process and nobody's picked me up yet.
Thank you everyone for your kind of take on that, and yeah, happy to help support with anybody who wants to look at this as well, and the kind of logistics of getting it to where it needs to be. So I think we've got a lot of clarification on how we can maybe go about doing that. Lynn, if I could ask you to share the slides again, and Debbie will just get you to kind of wrap up the conversations for the evening, please.
Yeah, that's fine. I can take over the control if you want from my side as well.
Yeah, please do.
Hit take control.
Thank you.
Right, I'll just set that up. 2 seconds. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Yep.
I can. Yep.
Okay. Hi everybody. So my name is Deborah Armstrong. So I'm the lead officer in the Planning, Policy and GIS team at Scottish Borders Council. I just wanted to say thanks to Tim Chris and Paul for a really useful presentations. I think they were really helpful to demonstrate to the communities the tools that are available. Further to the presentations on mapping tools, I was going to take you through some of the information, including surveys and reports that we hold within the planning policy team that might be of assistance to communities when producing local place plans. I think my presentation will be slightly different and focus on the information that the policy team hold that will hopefully be useful to communities. So what we're really trying to do is ensure that as much information as possible is provided to communities up front on our website or through packs that we can send out. And this is also going to include guidance on local place plan and the registration process, which we are currently finalising at the moment. And we thought that this would be a good webinar to add this presentation on to just after the mapping demos to allow communities to see what data, information and documents we have available. So this presentation is actually just went back to the very first slide for me. I'm just going to have to skip through 2 seconds. There we are. Is that pulling up the correct slide called development plan now?
It is for me, Debbie.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. So the planning policy team are ultimately responsible for the production of the local development plan and undertaking the research and monitoring work to support the local development plan and decision-making process. As well as this, we've got 2 community placemaking and regeneration officers, Sharon and Jess, within the team. And I think some of you on this call have probably met Sharon and Jess and are in dialogue with them on the community planning work ongoing at the moment. So Sharon and Jess work alongside the communities team in supporting the communities and community councils with both the borderlands plans and the local place plan process. I just wanted to take this opportunity just to explain a bit more about the development plan and what it actually is. So we have the statutory development plan for Scottish Borders Council. This comprises of National Planning Framework 4 along with the adopted Local Development Plan 2016. And we currently have a statutory duty to produce a local development plan every 5 years. NPF 4, National Planning Framework 4, I'll call it NPF 4 for the purposes of this, was adopted in February 2023 and sets out the long-term national spatial strategy for Scotland to 2045. It contains 33 national policies covering 3 key themes: sustainable places, livable places and productive places. NPF 4 also sets out the minimum all-tenure house and land requirement for each local authority at a national level. The priority focuses throughout NPF 4 are climate change, securing positive effects for biodiversity and the transition to net zero. We also produced a the Housing Supplementary Guidance in November 2017, which identified additional land for housing, and that's been brought forward now as formal allocations. I've included 2 hyperlinks here, so hopefully these will be useful, and they take you. The first one takes you straight to the adopted local development plan pages, and the second one is straight to our proposed local development plan pages. So the website pages for both of the plans contain all the relevant and background information in respect to the plan production. So what is included within the local development plan? As I said before, the plan was adopted in May 2016. We are currently in the final stages of our proposed plan, and we hope to have the new plan adopted by this summer. The local development plan must set out detailed policies and proposals to guide development and land uses to inform and help planning decisions. The adopted LDPL is split into 2 volumes. So volume 1 contains the policies. So we've got 55 policies covering 5 themes, and it also sets out the house and land requirement for the plan period. Volume 2 contains the settlement profiles. We have 90 settlement profiles within the Scottish Borders, and those profiles make reference to things like placemaking considerations, possible preferred areas for future growth, key infrastructure considerations, and any changing context for the development of the settlement. For each allocation within the plan, there are also a list of site requirements which identify the matters to be addressed at the planning application stage. I've got an example here. So this slide contains an extract. I've just picked out Kelso And this just really allows you to see what's on a settlement map within our local plan. So generally, it includes the development boundary, which is the black line around the I think, is that showing up okay? Is that quite, can you see that okay? I'm just thinking, I'm just going to pull up this. Here we are. So we've got our development boundary, the black line here. And then we've got our town centre is the hashed, the sort of black dash line here. And we've got the conservation areas in the sort of dashed green line. We've got key green spaces. These are these areas here. All the brown allocations are the housing allocations. You can see these here. I should just say that this is from 2016, so you will probably find that a lot of these allocations are actually developed now. So obviously the school's developed and this site's developed. We've got our longer term housing, which are out with the settlement boundary, and they're the hashed brown areas. So these are areas that are not formal allocations, but they might be suitable to be brought forward in a future plan subject to further site assessment. We've got the blue redevelopment sites. So there's one there. And we've got our business and industrial allocations. So the dark purple are our new sites that were taken forward, and the light purple are our safeguarded. So these are things like established business and industrial allocations. Business and industrial sites. We've got the school site, which is obviously now developed, and we've got structure planting identified around some of the allocations here, and the core activity area. So the core activity area is linked to the town centre policy, and you'll see that in the inset map here. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what's on a settlement map and the types of allocations that you can find. The next slide. I just wanted to take you through some of the research and monitoring work that the policy team are responsible for, both to support the production and the implementation of the development plan. The research and monitoring work also assists with the decision making as part of the application process too. So I just wanted to touch on 5 of the surveys that we undertake. The first one here is the employment land audit. We undertake the employment audit annually, and it monitors the supply of currently undeveloped employment land. So for example, this could be sites that are allocated within the local development plan for business and industrial land, or they could be windfall sites that have gained planning consent for businesses and industrial use, but they must be undeveloped sites. So we have a duty as a local authority to ensure that there's an adequate supply of business and industrial land throughout the Scottish borders allocated through the LDP. And this audit monitors the take-up and the status of the business and industrial land as well. It's also important to note that this audit does not include the monitoring of just vacant businesses and industrial units. So there will be properties that are vacant in, for example, established industrial estates. So we don't monitor those as part of this. This audit is really contained to the land itself. The next one is the housing land audit. So we monitor this. We monitor the housing land supply annually for both allocations and any sites that have been granted planning consent for housing. The audit also monitors the annual completions for the borders, broken down into 4 housing market areas and also down to individual settlement level. So this allows us to monitor the completions and the trends annually. The next one is the retail survey. We undertake this twice a year in both summer and winter, and we currently survey 18 settlements at ground floor level and monitor the use classes 1, 2, 3 and 7, along with the vacancy rates. It should be noted that we have actually recently updated the methodology as part of the most recent retail survey and widened the use classes that we're monitoring. And really, this allows us to monitor the use classes within each town centre and identify those towns with higher vacancy rate trends. It also helps us with future policy production in terms of the retail policy for the new plan, and also assists development management in terms of planning applications for changes of uses within town centre locations. The vacant and derelict land survey is undertaken annually. The methodology for this one's actually set out by the Scottish Government at a national level for all local authorities. So the survey monitors the vacant and derelict land, which is over a certain size. It should be noted that this does not include empty buildings where there is no associated land. However, the survey does allow us to monitor long-term vacant and derelict land sites and assists us in identifying potential redevelopment opportunities to be taken forward as part of the local development plan. The last one that I've got on the list that might be useful is the footfall survey. This is undertaken annually again and monitors footfall within 9 of our towns in the Scottish Borders. The survey provides evidence for the Council's town centre and retail policy decisions, and the data is also used for broader town centre performance monitoring purposes within the area. All of these surveys are available on our website along with the map outputs in many instances. The next slide. This is a link to our external public web GIS page. So this is a hyperlink here. So if you click on this link, that'll take you to our public web GIS map advanced. It contains an interactive map with a variety of layers. I've just listed a number of them here, but there are more, many of which are linked to policies within the local development plan themselves. So if I pick out a few layers that are displayed within our map advance, we've got natural environment layers, we've got all the local development plan allocations that I ran through within the Kelso settlement profile. We've got all the planning applications, building warrants, the wind energy. This allows us to see where our existing consents are in terms of wind energy. We've got gardens and design landscapes, conservation areas, listed buildings, scheduled monuments. And then we move on to things like Ramsar sites, SSSIs, SPAs, SECs and NSAs. Now I have to say it should be noted that we do have a few broken layers at the moment and we are aware of this issue and we are in the process of trying to resolve it. So if anybody does click this link and find some broken layers, I think they are generally contained to the natural environment layers. And we're hopefully they will be resolved soon. Again, this is just another tool to allow you another tool that communities can view that data that is available within the Scottish Borders that links up with the policies that are set out within the plan. The final link that I've got here is just some really useful links to the documents, surveys and reports that I've mentioned in the presentation. I've got links to the National Planning Framework 4, the adopted plan, the Housing Supplementary Guidance, the proposed plan. This one here is to the government website, just explaining a little bit more background on the planning system and the transformation in the planning system at the moment. Local place plans, that's our council website, so you'll find some of the resources that we've been have been mentioned and picked up through the presentations today. We've also got the research page that touches that's where you can find the surveys and reports that I touched on, the LDP guidance that's linked to our local development plan, and then the link to Map Advanced as well. I just wanted to say if anybody does want to discuss anything that's contained within the slides, please don't hesitate to contact myself, the planning policy team, or Jess and Sharon, and hopefully we can assist. If you wanted to try and access any of these, we can provide you with the links, or if you wanted to chat through any of the information that's contained within them, we're more than happy to do that. But it's really just hopefully, you know, we've explained that there is this available on the website, and hopefully that will help communities in preparing the local place plan. But again, more than happy to take any questions on this.
I had a wee question, Debbie, just around the adopted plan and the proposed plan.
Yeah.
How much of the adopted plan information will already be available within the Parish Online tool, presumably based on the information that's there?
It should be. I would need to double check. Chris, do you know? I don't know if our LDP allocations will probably not be on Parish Online, but I suppose could they be pulled from the improvement services layer? Is that right?
So yeah, we do take local plan data from improvement service, but obviously it's sort of changing and they're recompiling data. But like we were saying on the session earlier, we can bring data in from local authorities directly.
So we can provide that, and it could be transferred across, yeah.
I'm just wondering if it would be helpful to put in the proposed LDP information as well, given the timing that we're at the moment in terms of when that's likely to be adopted. Because I think in terms of giving people an up to the minute information base, that would be really helpful. So if we can pick that up with Chris, that would be good.
Yeah.
In terms of things like vacant and derelict land sites and the likes as well, all of that information kind of sits within the WebGIS platform as well. So if there's anything that we would like to see within Parish Online that isn't, then we can flag that up and pull that down too.
Yeah, the vacant and derelict land isn't available on WebGIS. So our HLA, our ELA and our vacant and derelict, we do have all that plotted, but it's not on our external WebGIS, but we do have that all in shapefiles and plotted.
Okay. So we can maybe pick that up with you offline, Chris, and just look at some of the things that might be helpful just to add into that mix as well.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That's grand.
Thank you. Was there any other questions for Debbie around the information that's been shared? Paul?
Paul, yep. Oh, Paul, you're just on mute.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just had a question. If sort of with the fact that the current LDP is hopefully going to be adopted and approved this summer, I think what that means is that will essentially be the local development plan for the next 10 years.
5 years. So we're the last, the proposed plan that's just going to be adopted, fingers crossed, this summer is the very last one of our 5-year plan. So that was started back in 2016. So that's been through the full process. It's been through examination under the old regulations. So it's a 5-year plan. Yeah. So our first new plan that we start, this plan that we start this year will be the new style plan, and that'll be our first 10-year plan under the new regulations.
And so the next cycle you'll be hoping to get the next local development plan would be 2029, I guess.
Around about that approximately, yeah, that's when we would be looking. So if you're talking five years from this summer, you're talking around about 2029, and it's at that point that and it's probably quite a good time as well for communities, because it means that we've got a bit of a lead-in time for communities to actually produce local place plans to be taken into consideration through this new style plan, because I think a lot of other local authorities, they're having to produce their evidence reports now, and a lot of communities and other local authorities haven't got as much of a lead-in time to actually prepare their local place plans. So we're talking, if we're starting to produce our evidence report, you're really talking at sort of a 2-year period. By the time you've produced your evidence report, you've got your gate check, and you can have a proposed local place plan, as far as I'm aware, when you're at that evidence report stage. So we do have communities have a good a bit of time to actually produce their local place plans for them to be taken into consideration in that process.
Yeah, but it would be the case that if communities are thinking that a proposal they put forward in a local place plan this year would actually become a statutory proposal, if accepted, that it wouldn't be until 2029 that it actually got into the statutory document.
That's correct, because we couldn't consider it until until we actually start the process of this plan. So if a community, for example, just reading the circular, one of the changes is that if a community group put forward something in the local place plan, when we came to do our call for sites, usually we ask for communities and individuals and agents to submit those sites. If there's something in a local place plan that has been registered at the point of a call for sites, we can take that into consideration if it's in an LPP without it actually being formally submitted through the call for sites process. So that's where that link is as well, through the local place plans into the LDP process moving forward as well.
I think it's worth just saying there that the way that the planning system works is on this currently 5-year cycle, but will be on this 10-year cycle. And we're at that point where actually we're about to start to gather that evidence again, which is where all those plans come in. So over the next 2-year period, we do expect that we will be seeing a number of these plans coming forward, and that will actually give Debbie the sort of the ideal timing to build that right in at the very start when they're starting on that next place, that next development cycle. So I think where we are as an organisation as well, whilst it's important from a planning perspective, the plans have a much more holistic purpose in the sense that they're looking at how we can develop a pipeline of projects to help attract funding, support economic development work, but also being used by members to make service delivery decisions, and also look at service improvements that are coming out from a community-led model. So but the reason that we're looking at them so holistically is so that it does actually support more than just the planning piece, but the planning legislation is a kind of underpinning that, and I guess kind of formalising those plans into legislation through the process. Beth.
Yeah, I mean, you probably answered it really, but my question is about can a local place plan ask for the change of an already adopted local development plan, either under the old style or under the new style? My understanding that there's still some secondary regulations coming out about that, but I hope you might be able to tell us a bit more about that, maybe.
Yeah, I think it's really it's a difficult one because it's for the communities to really set out how they want to see their community, but also in us registering a local place plan, it has to be in line with NPF4. So when we're looking at the circular, and this will be one of the things that when we're finalising the sort of registration criteria, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we'll have that criteria list for communities to tick off and make sure. So I've actually got the circular open at the moment, and it's got, I'm just trying to find the part where it says about the criteria for it being registered in NPF4.
Can I just clarify for everyone on the call as well? The circular is the guidance from the Scottish Government on how this process is going to work, essentially, because it is new planning legislation through NPF4. There is a little bit of a journey, and as Beth mentions, we are aware that there are still conversations ongoing about how local place plans that come forward during the adopted cycle might actually then influence the planning policy. So I think that's something that is going to kind of come out in the wash.
Yeah, and I mean, local place plans, they really have to make sure that they have to have regard for National Planning Framework, the local development plan. Think about how the local place plan proposals might generally align with relevant policy and development proposals in National Planning Framework and the local development plan. If the community feels strongly that the local place plan should diverge from any relevant policies or development set out, they have to set out clear reasons why the LPP is departing from this. So that, I think that's paragraph 29 in the circular. I knew it was somewhere, I just couldn't find it off the top of my head. But we're hoping to get along to the next session, Beth, and I was going to actually respond to you saying that we're hoping that we'll have the registration checklist ready for the April session. So I think that would be probably really useful to pick up, when we could just work through the registration process and pick up that checklist as well as part of that webinar session, if that's okay there.
Yeah, that would be really useful. Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, so that's on the 25th of April, and I can send the link for Naomi to circulate.
Yeah, that's grand. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I hope we haven't delved too far into the kind of legislative side of all of this in terms of what that means for the plans. But I think what we're really just trying to get to is that there is a commitment to bringing all of this information together, and the more that can be captured through the mapping software to start to identify within a place-based context what the aspirations of the communities are, the more helpful that's going to be for Debbie's evidence reporting, but for all these other reasons, not least about looking at how we can get money into communities to help them realise ambitions. I'm conscious of time, and we're out of it, but if there's any final questions, please do raise your hand. Beautifully done, thank you. If there's no more questions, I'll just kind of round up and say thank you so much to all of our speakers this evening. Really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge and the willing to help communities to develop and support them on this journey. We will circulate the slides. We'll circulate the recording as well once we've had a wee bit of time just to edit that all together. Edit out our technical difficulties. But please do get in touch, and the information is on the support pages for contacts as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Bye.